Hey y'all, welcome to Pleiadian Point of View. I'm Peyton with Peyton Energetics, and I'm a Pleiadian channel and starseed coach. So, in today's POV, the Pleiadians wanted to talk to us a little bit about some of the frustration that a lot of us are feeling right now. Because one of the things that they are noticing as they scan our collective energy is that a lot of us in the awakened community are feeling a little discouraged. We are kind of feeling like we take one step forward and three steps backwards. So the Pleiadians wanted to tell us a little bit about what is happening right now and why so many of us are feeling like this. But before we jump into today's topic, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. So, today we're going to talk a little bit about this wave of frustration and discouragement that so many of us are feeling right now. Because the spiritual journey can be a little bit of an up and down game where you feel like you're making progress, you get excited and encouraged that things seem to be getting better, that things seem to be working, and then it seems like you just get knocked to your knees. Like all those old issues come rushing back, and you're like, I'm back to square one. So, what is actually happening here? Why does this keep happening to us on the spiritual journey? Well, what the P's wanted us to understand about this up and down that seems to be part of our daily life now, where we feel like we're kind of doing okay, we're kind of getting it, and then we're back to the beginning. So, the P's wanted to explain a little bit about what's really going on here. So, as we are moving through our spiritual growth and development, what we are always striving to do is to raise our vibration. We know that is the entire ball game. Only thing that matters is raising our frequency, expanding our consciousness. That's what most of us in the spiritual community spend a lot of time and energy on. But one thing that we don't realize is how this spiritual growth process actually unfolds. So, what happens as we start to do our spiritual work? And if you think back to when you first had your spiritual awakening, those scary days, you may remember that you had a lot of issues that needed to be dealt with. A lot of us were really kind of in a bad place when we had our spiritual awakening. So, what happens is we start to do our work, right? We start to learn tools and processes to release our limiting beliefs, to make positive changes in our life, to start to meditate. We start to take better care of ourselves. We start to clean up our lives, our environments. Every little step that we take raises our vibration. But what happens as we start to make these changes is we start to raise our frequency. And that's what we're after, right? That's the goal. But what happens as we start to really do this work intensively, and it is possible now to make huge jumps in our vibration very, very quickly, much faster than we could a couple years ago, because it's more supported by the planetary energies. So, what's happening in this process is we do something in our life to raise our vibration. And there's tons of different ways we do this, but we just named a few of them. So say you're taking steps to raise your vibration. And then what happens is it feels like everything kind of falls apart. But what is actually happening from an energetic level is you've moved to a new vibration. You've moved to what we call a new timeline. And it's kind of like moving to a different radio station. But what happens as we make these changes in our vibration, especially when we make the big changes that we're making right now as a collective and also as individuals, we're jumping really, really quickly between timelines. What happens is, as soon as we land on a new timeline, we're in an entirely new reality. And we don't realize that because we don't get that kind of feedback from the world around us. So it just looks like same old, same old. But as we land in that new parallel reality with the higher vibration that we worked so hard for, the first thing that happens is that anything that we are holding on to that isn't a match to the frequency of our new home vibration comes popping to the surface and seems to kind of slap us in the face. So, this is one of the reasons why, as we do our spiritual work, it seems like it's going well. We're feeling good. We're getting positive feedback in terms of manifestations and synchronicities. And then, whoomp, it seems like we get smacked in the face with all of our old stuff. What's happening is we've actually made it to another vibrational level. And then the natural first reaction of being on that new radio station, that new frequency, is that anything that doesn't match it come shooting to the surface. So that's why it can feel like all of our issues come up at the same time. Like we see those same patterns that we just haven't been able to break out of. So we can often get very discouraged about this. And for most of us, the ego mind gets all in the game and starts to tell us this isn't working, you're wasting your time, what makes you think you can change, all of that helpful ego dialogue that so many of us get. But what happens is the ego mind likes to spin this in a negative direction, to say it's not working, to throw up all of this stuff that is coming back up as proof that it's not working. But in reality, the opposite is the case. So when you are going along and you're making progress, and then you feel like you do one of those backslides where all that old stuff comes up again, or you get that manifestation that you've had 100 times and you're just sick of it. What that actually is confirmation that you have changed, that you have moved to a new timeline. So for so many of us, it is natural for us to get into frustration and despair. And I know I have had times recently after major timeline jumps where I'm like, what is the point? This just isn't working. And I catch myself, I'm like, that is just the ego mind trying to make sense of this. And flip that to recognizing that what this actually is, when you hit these periods that seem like you're backsliding, it's actually a pat on the shoulder that you have actually changed. So very easy for the ego mind to get into frustration and despair. But the way the P's are encouraging us to reframe this is to actually look at this for what it is. It is actually proof that you made a huge transition, that you have majorly jumped frequencies. So if we can look at these times that look like we are backsliding, like it's not working, like it's just not happening for us, and realize that that is actually the proof that it is working, we can completely change how we look at these periods of adjustment. And whenever we feel like we are backsliding, all this is we are adjusting to a new timeline, a new version of reality that exists at a higher level of consciousness. So of course, it is going to take us a moment to settle into that new vibration. So a better way to look at these periods of backsliding is to think of them the way you would, say you're starting to work out after taking a break a little longer than you should have, and you go back to the gym, and the first thing that you notice the next day is you hurt from head to toe, right? Every muscle is screaming. You're like, why did I do this to myself? But you don't get all discouraged and stop going because you know that is just a sign that you are using your muscles. You are building new muscles. So you don't get frustrated and discouraged with it. In fact, for a lot of us, we get really excited about it. We're like, oh yeah, it hurts so good. It means it's working. And that's how the P's are encouraging us to look at these periods where it seems like we're going nowhere, like we are stuck in quicksand, nothing is happening. And it is so tempting to get into the ego mind in these times of adjustment. And it is so tempting to throw in the towel, to say this isn't working. In reality, it is proof that it is working. So the P's wanted to help us understand how this process works so that the next time you hit one of these little time periods, and these usually last 2 to 3 weeks. So whenever we make a timeline jump, it takes us 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how big of a jump you made. And y'all, right now we are jumping timelines so fast and so dramatically that it could even take longer than that. So whenever you hit one of these little time periods where it feels like you're sliding backwards, if you can take a moment and just reframe that in your mind as confirmation that you have just made a major shift, you'll find that you can keep yourself out of that sense of frustration that so many of us get into on the spiritual path. Because whenever we make a huge jump, what happens is we have to clear up anything in our life that doesn't match the new timeline. Because as the P's tell us all the time, we can't take this density with us. We cannot take the fear with us. We can't take the anger and powerlessness with us to the higher dimensions. So if we want to move forward, which if we're on our spiritual path, that is all we are about, right? Is our ascension journey. If we want to do that, we take this opportunity where it feels like you're going backwards to clean house, because anything that is popping up in these periods of adjustment is your higher self showing you what can't go with you anymore. So the quicker you take this, you identify whatever the themes are. Don't get into the story. We don't care about the story that the ego mind wants to play with, like a dog with a bone. If you just take a moment and identify what is the theme that's coming up, how does it feel? What happens is you'll identify what needs to be integrated. And then just drop in and start doing your healing work on it, doing your integration, doing your processing, doing your template breakdown work. And as you do that, you will move through these periods of adjustment very quickly. And then it starts to even out where you don't feel these extreme highs and lows, a feeling like you're making progress one moment, then all the way back to square one the next. It's all a matter of how we look at and use these periods of adjustment, because they're powerful windows if you use them to clear out whatever's not a match to your new timeline. And these things are not going to go away. So if you are getting reflections of things coming up, it's really a good idea to do your healing work immediately, because the faster you release that energy, integrate it, process it, we never want to deny it or suppress it. As soon as you process that energy, the sooner you will be comfortably on your new timeline and ready for the next one. So just a little bit of help from the P's today in reframing a little of this frustration that so many of us are feeling. Like we don't know if we're making any progress or if we are just spinning our wheels. So that is what the P's wanted to share with you in today's POV. As always, if you want to learn how to do all the really cool and amazing techniques that the P's talk about in these videos, don't forget, hit the link in the description to work with me one-on-one. I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.